10 WWE stars who were fired and then rehired immediately. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out our new videos on Wrestlelamia XL. Number 10. Samoa Joe. Now in April of 2021, Samoa Joe was officially released by WWE. This came as a huge surprise at the time, as Joe was killing it as a color commentator on Raw, and even if he never wrestled again, he had a bright future as an announcer. But when Triple H discovered that Joe was released, he wasn't exactly thrilled. Joe was one of Triple H's top guys in NXT, and he decided to call Joe a few hours after his initial release to bring him back into the mix in a new role. Speaking on Out of Character, Joe discussed the unusual situation.
It was weird, Johnny called me and he told me, hey, listen, we're gonna have to release you from your contract. And I said, I was like, okay, cool. I mean, him, Joe, we think the world of you and we'd love to work with you again. And I was like, all right, that, no, absolutely, Johnny, hey, listen, it's and honestly, I did have a bit of understanding. A few hours later, I get a call from Hunter and pretty much all kind of changed. So, I mean, well, I'd sent some company farewell texts just to people just saying, hey, look, pleasure working with you. Some genuine people that I really enjoyed working with, and I got a text back, hey, give me a minute, getting out of a meeting, and then we had a brief conversation, which was essentially like, give us a little bit of time. I'll work out a package, and we'll be talking soon. I said, all right, that's totally fine. I have no problem with that. Led to my return back to NXT.
It's crazy to think that Samoa Joe was only released for just a few hours, and Triple H followed through on his promise to Joe, as Joe would return to NXT programming in a new role that would last until 2022. He was released again by WWE after recovering from COVID-19 and was assigned to work as a trainer backstage. Joe then went on to AEW, even capturing the AEW Championship and proving to many people that he still had it in him as a top wrestler. Number 9. The Boogeyman. Vince McMahon was always said to be a big fan of the Boogeyman. So when the Boogeyman was let go from his WWE deal without his knowledge, he brought back Boogeyman in just 6 hours. This story was revealed by Rene Dupree on his podcast, who stated, "Did you ever hear the story about the Boogeyman when he got hired? He got fired in the morning at 9 AM and then rehired at 3 o'clock in the afternoon the same day. You remember Johnny Ace? So Johnny didn't like the Boogeyman, and then I guess he thought he had enough power to be able to fire someone like the Boogeyman. And then when Vince found out that the Boogeyman was fired, he made Johnny Ace call him up and rehire him. I think with a raise, actually. And the fact that the Boogeyman also got a raise is kind of hilarious, and the fact that Johnny Ace believed that he had the power to fire a wrestler without McMahon's consent is rather telling. Number 8. Zelina Vega. Zelina Vega had one of the more bizarre releases of the past decade. Vega would be released following her to take it to social media to support unionization, and this was predominantly due to WWE banning wrestlers from making revenue from third-party platforms. 8 months later, Vega returned to the company, and there was little to no explanation as to why she was just fired and then returned in the same year. Vega would then deliver an interview with Digital Spy where she would claim that she had unfinished business and would make no mention of her prior issues with WWE. More than anything, WWE has always been a place where I felt like I had unfinished business. For me as a kid, I wanted to be a champion, and there were so many things I want to accomplish. Coming back, I set my eyes on the SmackDown Women's Championship. That's why I'm focused on the most and seeing where that takes me. Sometimes you don't need that mental break. It may not be wrestling, it may be anything. You take your time, revitalize yourself, get refreshed, and you can dive back into that creative side of you and think, what can I do differently? Or how can I add this style to my moveset? There are lots of things you'll see now with my outfits, especially my jacket. A lot of fans question why Vega had returned, as little had changed when Vega returned regarding WWE's established policy when it came to third-party content. Number 7. Emma. When news broke in 2014 that Emma had been released due to breaking the law, everyone was just shocked. It was reported that Emma was arrested for stealing an iPad, and in the hours following the arrest, it then surfaced that Emma did pay for her purchases. However, one of her items was incorrectly scanned. Due to this mix-up, WWE felt like they had no choice but to immediately reinstate Emma to a WWE contract, and they even released an official statement. Upon further evaluation, WWE has reinstated Tennille Dashwood, aka WWE Diva Emma, but will take appropriate punitive action for her violation of the law. This violation didn't really change things for Emma when it came to her usage on TV, and if anything, it just made fans talk about her even more. Number 6. Drew Gulak. In 2020, Drew Gulak was quietly removed from the WWE Superstars page on WWE.com. It was then reported that Gulak had decided to not renew his WWE contract and his release would subsequently follow. But what was interesting about this release was that Gulak was often featured on TV at the time, and it was an odd situation that didn't really make a ton of sense. It was made even weirder when 11 days later it was reported that Gulak had re-signed with WWE and was now back under contract. Was this a simple miscommunication, or was it a case of WWE completely forgetting the fact that Gulak's WWE deal was set to expire? Number 5. Eddie Guerrero. The legendary Eddie Guerrero was released in late 2001 following a DUI. During the time of his release, Guerrero was set to return to WWE following a stint in rehab. This was a major blow both for Guerrero and WWE. According to Jim Ross on his podcast, releasing Guerrero was the hardest firing of his entire career, and the reason behind it was because he saw total greatness in him.
No, it probably was, because I saw greatness. I saw one of the greatest pro wrestlers in the world that we're about to lose if we don't get our arms around his problem. But in order for us to get our arms around his problem, he's got to cooperate with us. He's got to allow us to hug him. And that's what we kept waiting on. So yeah, that was probably the toughest, because I had such an emotional investment in him.
Thankfully, Latino Heat would be able to turn his life around, and just a few months later, he would be brought back into the company. This run would go extremely well for Guerrero, as he would become one of the most popular WWE stars of all time, and even win the WWE Championship in 2004. Number 4. Drake Maverick. The social media reaction to Drake Maverick's WWE release was like nothing seen before. Maverick would respond to his release by speaking openly and honestly in a video on social media, and this had fans urging WWE to bring him back. At the time of his release, Maverick was set to compete in a tournament for NXT, and in an unprecedented fashion, WWE allowed him to finish off his duties in the company. They would even work it into a storyline which some would say was in bad taste. However, WWE would eventually re-sign Maverick to a new deal, so it managed to go in his favor in the long run. In late 2021, Maverick would then be released yet again, and in a similar situation, WWE would eventually bring him back, this time in a brand new role. Since 2022, Maverick has worked backstage in WWE, and it's widely believed that he works within the creative team. Number 3. Daniel Bryan. In the aftermath of the Nexus debut on WWE television in 2010, it was announced by WWE that Nexus member Daniel Bryan had just been outright fired. Due to Bryan choking Justin Roberts with his own tie, this wasn't seen in line with PG guidelines, and to appease sponsors, WWE felt like they just had no choice but to let Bryan go. This wasn't strictly a WWE call, and it was widely reported at the time that WWE didn't even want Bryan to go, but they felt like they had no choice in the matter. A matter of months after his firing, WWE decided that after all the external heat had died down, that it would be safe to bring Bryan back. He would return at the 2010 SummerSlam event, and over the next few years would go on to become one of the biggest babyfaces on planet Earth. In relation to the initial firing, this is what Bryan had to say regarding it back in 2010 while speaking to Slam Wrestling. I had never had to work on a PG show before. I got caught up in what I was doing. I got to the back and they told me that we weren't allowed to do that kind of stuff. Vince McMahon called me himself and explained they were letting me go because they were a PG company and couldn't have that kind of behavior. But after I was gone, the fans, the WWE Universe was awesome. There were Daniel Bryan chants at the shows, a main event of Randy Orton and John Cena, and fans were chanting for me. WWE did the right thing by bringing Bryan back as soon as they possibly could. This occurred during a time period where WWE seemed paranoid regarding upsetting any kid-friendly sponsors, so a lot of their executive decisions were linked to these specific sponsorships. Number 2. Matt Hardy. The real-life affair between Lita and Edge in 2005 led to Lita's boyfriend at the time, that being Matt Hardy, having a justified crash out online. Instead of supporting Hardy through one of the most traumatic experiences of his life, WWE decided in a rather controversial move to let Hardy go from his contract for unprofessional behavior. The fans were furious at WWE's decision, and they would hijack every single show with chants of "We want Matt." Segments with Edge and Lita were getting difficult to deliver as the crowd ate them alive. They decided that the right thing to do was bring Hardy back into the company and work a storyline with both Matt Hardy and Edge. WWE, to their credit, presented this extremely well, and the feud had a great sense of realism to it. And number 1. R-Truth. WWE firing a popular name with fans can always lead to backlash of some kind. However, releasing a WWE veteran who is one of the most popular names backstage is a recipe for disaster. When it was announced that WWE wouldn't be renewing R-Truth's WWE deal, anger was heard from fans around the world as well as talent backstage. Fans took to social media to share their displeasure at WWE's call, and talent would pay tribute to R-Truth in heartwarming posts. It became apparent rather quickly that WWE had made a massive mistake. The fans would chant for truth during key segments, hijacking Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and due to the backlash that could be heard from around the world, both from fans and talent, Truth returned after just 6 days. It was reported that Truth had signed a new WWE deal and he would be allowed to use his real name Ron Killings moving forward. Truth would resurface in the WWE, taking out John Cena in the main event of Money in the Bank to a huge ovation from the crowd. It was one of WWE's best and worst decisions at the same time. But there you have it folks, 10 WWE stars who were fired and then rehired immediately. Be sure to leave your comments down below and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.